Hi, everyone, and welcome to my YouTube channel. If you'd like to stay up to date on content, please subscribe, and you could hit the little notification bell if you want to receive notifications when videos come out. So, today we're talking about the Tibetan Book of the Dead, also known as the Great Book of Liberation through Herring. This book was written by Padmasan Baba, the founder of Buddhism in Tibet. He first brought Buddhism to Tibet, and this book was buried and hidden secretly until its time was for it to come forth. So when he first wrote it, it was not known. It was hid away in a cave until many years later it was found. And this book is meant to be read to the Tibetan monks, to the lamas, for 49 days after their death to guide them through the after death stages, what in Tibetan Buddhism is called the bardos, to try and guide them through to awakening to the white light of God, of eternity. So what this book, to come across it, is said to be extremely good karma for anyone to ever have access to it, to hear about it, to read about it, anything of the sort. And it's also said, which is true, that even if you hear about it and then forget at the time of your death, when the veil covering your mind is gone, you'll remember it, and you'll remember the teachings of it. So even being exposed to it once or twice in a lifetime and forgetting completely will still benefit you substantially when you pass on. So what does this book describe, this Tibetan Book of the Dead? It talks about the different states that a being passes through upon leaving the body. So the first state that they come to is basically the full trip. You're exposed to the clear white light of God, of eternity, and have the opportunity to merge back into this source, into this oneness, into this infinite place from which you've came. However, due to strong karmic tendencies, due to strong karma and attachment, due to fear, it's extremely difficult for a being to make that trip right away into the light. And so the Tibetan monk would read this book in the air of the dead monk to connect with them spiritually in order to guide them either to enlightenment or to the most fortunate rebirth. So in the East, the moment of death is the most important moment of a lifetime, and all life is said to be preparation for that moment. All spiritual practice is preparation for the moment of death, because where you are when you die has a catastrophically huge determination in the next birth you take and where your spirit goes next. And you can't just think like, I'm just going to live like this really bad life, be a scoundrel, and then at the moment of death, I'll just remember God and go back into infinity. Unfortunately, it doesn't work like that because of the tendencies you create, and because the huge amounts of fear and uncertainty at the time of death and following, that if your practice hasn't been strong before, the odds of you being able to maintain that mindfulness is difficult. So we're not going to do a full comprehensive study of the Tibetan Book of the Dead in this talk, but one thing that's important is to see the different realms that are described in it that a soul can go to if it is to be reborn. There's the heavenly realms, which are the realms of the gods. There's the human realms, which is where we live. There's the demigod realms. There's the animal realms, which we're familiar with. There's the hungry ghost realms, which are very undesirable. And there's the hell realms, which is what's thought of as hell. And so, like, some of these higher realms still have great delights in them, but they also have their downsides as well, because everything in form is subject to suffering and decay, and even in the higher realms. So I wanted to read real quick some of the pitfalls of each of the realms. So one of the pitfalls of the heavenly realm is pride, indulgence, attachment to ease and pleasure, static comfort, lack of opportunity for spiritual growth. That's because in the heavenly realms, that's where the gods are. Like when you think of the gods, like Zeus or Poseidon, or you think of the Hindu gods, or any gods or deities that you think of. The Christian God, not the Father is the one, but the one that you think of is on the throne with the angels. The gods have extreme power, extreme bliss, live extremely long lifetimes, but because of that, they have less energy for spiritual growth, less seeing that. They have lots of ease and pleasure. They can live lifetimes that are unfathomably longer than ours and in realms unfathomably greater, but eventually they have to pass on from that and they'll come back and take other births again. And so the demigod realm, also called the asuras, is like characterized by jealousy, envy, pride, constant strife. These are like higher beings that like to fight, um, like to, yeah, like vibe for control. They're beings that you hear about in the mythological stories, starting wars and those types of things. The human realm, which we're familiar with, birth, sickness, old age, and death, driven by delusion, fear, and fixation. The animal realm, dullness, servitude, and ignorance. Now, sometimes people think that animals, and we do have a lot to learn from them, and they do sometimes live very peaceful lives. But what we learn through study of the Tibetan Book of the Dead is that animals have a very low ability for the intelligence required for spiritual growth. So if one goes back to an animal realm, it could be for a very, very, very long amount of births, and it's very difficult to progress spiritually unless and only if you're basically in the presence of a very high human or other spiritual being. So, say you were the owner of a pet and you do much spiritual practice and send prayers their way and include them in that and stay mindful of them, you can actually help them grow exponentially spiritually. So the animal realm is characterized by a lot of that. And you can think of that as anywhere from insects to fish to land animals to birds. So the animal realm is not really the best to take birth in. Next realm, hungry ghost realm, is extreme privation, craving, addiction, and greed. These are said to be beings that have these big, huge stomachs, but these little mouths, so they can't fill them. That realm is said to definitely want to be avoided. And there's different lights that represent each of these realms. And so when the being gets pulled toward a certain light upon death, that's how they end up in that realm. And you would think, okay, well, I just won't go to that light. I just won't go to the light of that realm. But it's not really like that, because like the clear white light and the lights of the higher realms, if your soul isn't ready for that and if you're not pure enough, basically it scares you, and you can't, you turn away from it and you run into these lower, more comfortable realms, like the dull smoky light of the hells or the ghost realms or the animal world, or back to the light of the human world. So what we're doing here is characterizing, like, and giving an understanding of the possibilities of after death states, because the soul lives on, so you don't disappear when you die. And the bardo states are similar to the Christian purgatory state. It's where you're at for those, and they characterize it as 49 days, but like those days and that time, whatever it is after your death, before you go to the next place that you're going to be, whether it's a heavenly realm, whether it's what's thought of as the Christian heaven, whether it's back here. And this is all depending on your karma. But what they're saying here is a being that's been exposed to this literature that can remain conscious at the time of death and after the time of death, and a being that's being helped by another, can be very fortunate indeed. So it's actually the most beneficial thing you can do with this information is when you lose a family member, friend, or any being, human or non human or animal, you can pray with and connect with them, whether it's through a picture, through this book, and because we're not always going to be like in front of their body, and use your prayers and your love and your insight to motivate them to leave their attachment, to go towards the white light, to get as high as they can. Because when beings die, they often have huge attachment to the family members that are left behind, that are crying, that are struggling, and they wait around. And the best I always encourage people when I send them prayers after death is, we love you and go on your way. Go as high as you can towards the white light and move on your journey. Like, we're okay here. And that's the best thing you can send to a being that passes on. So this hungry ghost realm, the first time I ever heard about it, when I was studying the Tibetan Book of the Dead, there's a great version by Robert Thurman you can listen to on Audible or read. A giant chill went up my spine that said, and it said, you don't want to go there. And it was like me telling it to somebody else. And so in that moment, I perceived that I had most likely been to that realm at some previous time in my existence. And that chill that went up my spine was like the suffering that my spirit remembered from being there. The hell realm, characterized by tortured suffering, aggression, anger, and hatred. I mean, everybody kind of knows what hell is. Of course, that extreme anger can lead people to the hell realms upon death. Extreme anger leads to extreme delusion. And these realms, you might not be in it for eternity, but you can be in them for extremely long periods of time. However, so they're definitely to be avoided. And it's all the results of the karma that we create where we end up. So beings that are very confused, very disoriented at death and the after death states, for example, say you were an atheist and you were very adamant on your life being over when you died, and next thing you know, you found yourself awake and living in there, and you were very confused and thrown in a stupor and you had all these things going on. You almost sort of get genetically reprogrammed into your next birth without much, you could say, conscious say in it, whereas a higher being has much more power to direct themselves. And it's said in these after death states that in these bardo states that huge amounts of evolution spiritually can be gained or huge amounts can be lost. So they're very important to be aware and conscious during these times, because the veils that normally cover you in life, they keep your mind limited, they keep your spirit encased in the body, are gone. So everything's fluid. It's much more open and expansive, and like the potential to go in any direction is very powerful. So that's why this book was created, to help people stay conscious as they're crossing over in between lifetimes. So the way we're going to finish today is by reading the Heart Suture, a version by Roshi Joan Halifax, which I happen to like very much. And she uses the term boundlessness in here. And when you think of boundlessness, think of it as being your nature being infinite. Your nature being without beginning and without end. You're not a human at all, and you're not a body at all, but that your spirit is literally all encompassing. Imagine it going out into infinite space and universe beyond universe, and that all being you, and even beyond that, beyond what can be seen. That is the nature of boundlessness that she talks about in this text. The Heart Suture is one of the most famous sutras in Buddhism, and it's read very often. Here's how it begins. Avalokiteshvara, who helps all to awaken, that means the Buddha of compassion, moves in the deep course of realizing wisdom beyond wisdom, sees that all 5 streams of body, heart, and mind are without boundary, and frees all from anguish. O Shariputra, that was a disciple of the Buddha's, who listens to the teachings of the Buddha, form is not separate from boundlessness. Boundlessness is not separate from form. Form is boundlessness. Boundlessness is form. The same is true of feelings, perceptions, inclinations, and discernment. O Shariputra, boundlessness is the nature of all things. It neither arises nor perishes. So all things nature is one with God. Neither stains nor purifies, neither increases nor decreases. Boundlessness is not limited by form, by bodies, nor by feelings, perceptions, inclinations, or discernment. It is free of eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind, free of sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, and objects of mind. It is free of sensory realms, including the realms of mind. It is free of ignorance and the end of ignorance. Boundlessness is free of old age and death, and free of the end of old age and death. It is free of suffering, arising, cessation, and path, and free of wisdom and attainment. Being free of attainment, those who help all to awaken abide in the realization of wisdom beyond wisdom, and live with an unhindered mind. Without hindrance, the mind has no fear. Free from confusion, those who lead all to liberation embody profound serenity. All those in past, present, and future who realize wisdom beyond wisdom manifest unsurpassable and thorough awakening. Knowing that realizing wisdom beyond wisdom is no other than this wondrous mantra, this what we're reading now, luminous, unequaled, and supreme. It relieves all suffering. It is genuine, not illusory. So set forth this mantra of realizing wisdom beyond wisdom. Set forth this mantra that says, Gate Gate Parasamgate Bodhi Svaha. So the Heart Suture is telling you to chant this great mantra. Gate Gate Paragate Parasamgate Bodhisvaha. It means gone, gone, gone beyond, to go beyond the beyond. And then it says awaken, oh joy, or awaken, wow. So it's saying wake up beyond the beyond, beyond all, into eternity, beyond all perceptions and all conceptions and anything held in mind. And then that awakening goes, oh joy, oh wow, awakening to the wondrous nature of reality. But you don't even have to think of the words if you chant the mantra. Just chanting the mantra in itself will take you to the goal. Thank you so much for checking out this video. Please leave any comments in the box below. Any questions, feel free to ask, and hit the subscribe button at the end if you want to be notified of more content. Thank you.